Hello and welcome to another episode of Is There More, the podcast. I am your host, Megan Tully, and today we're coming at you live from Creator House, Dallas. This podcast is brought to you by Dialog Life Skills, the world's scalable solution to the teen and young adult mental health crisis. Dialog is using carefully structured sentence stems during a conversation to make sure everyone feels safe and heard. You'll hear me use parts of the dialogue process during our episode today, such as mirroring, summarizing, validating, and empathizing. And most importantly, I'll be asking the question, is there more? Which is one of the sentence stems in the dialogue process that anyone can easily learn to have better relationships, improved mental health, more career success, and joy in life. That being said, the artist that's hopping on for some mental health and environmental insights today, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to love her. Welcome, a creator with a passion for teaching children how to take care of our Mother Earth through her music and so much more. The singing scientist, also known as Jordan Just, at Jordan Just on all platforms except Spotify, Jordan Ayanna. That's JordanAyanna.
Yay!
Hey. Okay, so Jordan.
Yeah.
Tell me, right off the bat, let's just talk about the singing scientist, because I think that is really interesting, and how your passion for music and science and environmental education as well kind of came together.
Yes. So I am a classically trained musician. I have been singing since I have been speaking, honestly. And I went to school to a performing arts middle school, and then I went to a performing arts high school. And then whenever it came to go to college, I was like, college, I want to do music, respectfully. And my mom is an educator. My mom she's actually the provost at Coppin State University. My dad has his degree in law. And so not going to school was not an option. That was not an option. So I was like, okay, well, if I'm going to school, I'm not paying for it. I don't feel like y'all should pay for it. That's not something that I don't know. My mom was like, okay, well, let's narrow it down. What do you like? I was like, well, I like being outside. I don't see myself sitting behind a desk. I am very creative. So let's figure this out. I found a beautiful scholarship. NOAA, CCME, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, gave me a full scholarship to study environmental science. And my focus was marine biology. So I was a NOAA CCME scholar. And that was really dope. I got to work with NOAA. I got to work with the Environmental Protection Agency. I got to travel and do research. I got to work alongside a lot of really dope scientists. And I fell in love. I really genuinely fell in love with environmentalism and advocating for the earth and all the things. But the whole time while I was in college and doing these things, I was also in the studio. So I would my studio was right down the street from school. So I would go to the studio, me and my homies, we started the studio. That's how I literally made money to eat. I would do features and write songs for people, record vocals, all the things. And I would go to the studio, fall asleep in the studio, wake up, go to class, go to the lab, get my lab hours in, oohs and ahs through class. My teacher was like, "Girl, why are you singing? Like, bro, do you know your work like you know your music?" I'm like, respectfully, yes, I did. Mm-hmm. So it was separated for a very long time, and I was blessed to have a dean who noticed, like, okay, you're very talented, you're very creative, you're very musical. We should kind of look into that. And so what I did was I had to do a senior thesis, right? So my senior thesis at first was genetically and rebiologically engineering oysters to be able to filter out and decompose microplastics. So that's what I was studying, because microplastics are really a huge issue when it comes to the ocean, when it comes to our bodies, when it comes to just period, when plastic doesn't fully biodegrade. So they have plastic at almost every single level, from macro to micro. So I was like, okay, cool. Oysters are natural filters. Wow. So if we can genetically engineer oysters to filter out microplastics, like that's really deep. But then I was like, once I got deep into that research and all the things, I was like, okay, I feel like I need to talk more about how these things actually affect people. Because one of the things that I was noticing as someone who's extremely empathetic and observant, and I'm a people's person first, and I've worked with kids my whole life, and I've worked with students and all the things, super creative. I noticed that there's a disconnect between science and society. I'm like, we're studying and we're doing all this research, we're doing all these things, we're studying all these things, we're collecting all this data, but the people who are directly affected by these issues that we are solving have no idea what is going on. They don't, and science is very, very, very threatening when you use these big terms. And so I was seeing, I'm like, a lot of y'all in this lab are doing this for your resume and your ego. This has nothing to do with the people who it's affecting. So I went to my dean and I was like, I'm changing my senior thesis. He's like, okay, yes, like so excited. Yeah, I'm like, yeah, I'm changing it to bridging the gap between science and society using digital media. And with that, it allowed me to be able to use multimedia platforms like such as music, art, design, all the things, teaching, education, Instagram, to convey what is going on and bridge that gap. So in that, I fell in love with that. I did my senior thesis on that, and I kind of became my research. So I entered a scholarship. I entered a program like everyone had to present their data. So everyone's data is like these complex graphs and all these big numbers and all these things. I did mine and I actually won the competition. It's so funny.
Hey.
I did mine at a 5th grade reading level. So I took all of my data and I comprised it to a 5th grade reading level. And I showed the difference between the scientific process and the creative process. And I showed that they're not that different. So we need to be focusing on how we can include everyone, because the average person, specifically in America, reads at a 5th grade reading level, which is why the signs that we see outside the driving signs of 5th grade. So if they cannot understand what we're doing at a 5th grade reading level and they cannot comprehend it, why are we doing it, period? These are the people who are being affected by these things. They don't care about these big numbers in your resume. At the end of the day gonna end and they need to know. So I ended up winning. And from there, I fell in love with the concept. So I would literally go on these research trips in my like swagged out outfits. Like I would go to these oyster farms with my like racer jacket on and like really just represent the people, like really represent these these Black and brown communities who are directly affected by climate chaos due to environmental racism. So, because I'm like, these are the people who, when these catastrophic things happen, are directly affected and impacted first, and they're the last ones to be helped by our system. Period. So, after I graduated, it was after COVID, the Sustainability Institute at FAMU, that's where I went to school, FAMU, was shut down. My dean believed in me and he was like, I feel like what you're doing, I feel like you can apply it here. So he made me the assistant director of operations at the Sustainability Institute. And my job was to revamp the entire institute, bring it to life, get kids excited about it, create social media, public relations. And baby, that's exactly what I did. We went from like 200 followers to like a couple thousand. I got partnerships with Goodwill, public relations with multiple gardens. We started a campus garden. We got the community involved, and it just it was so catalytic and exciting. We got multiple campuses involved because it's not only FAMU, it's also FSU. So it was just beautiful. And then I got to this point, which I feel like all artists get whenever you're just doing, you get to this point where it's like, okay, it could be impacting more people. This could be impacting more people. And my students, I'll never forget this. My students were like, Jordan, because the music that I was making was music that we could all listen to together while we're gardening, while we're being led. My students, so I had students from the age of 7 to 24, like students my age to like young students I was working with. They were like, Miss Roberts, you need to go. You need to go to the world. You need to go. You need to be like, respectfully, this ain't it. Like, I'm like, y'all, I do this for you. I do this for y'all because I want y'all to be able to express yourselves as creatives. It's very hard for me, extremely hard for me. And I'm blessed to have an extroverted personality to where I was able to fight and I was able to advocate for women being represented in science, for Black women being represented in science, for all the things, right? But not everyone is like that. Most of my students are very anxious. They're very quiet. They're very timid. So just giving them those tools to be able to do that. And I was like, okay, I want them to be able to have jobs and work at companies where they don't have to dilute themselves. So that's why I started WINU, Wake Your Neighbors Up Worldwide. And it's my company, and it's engineering the foundation of a creative, sustainable community built on passion, production, and principle. So that's where we are now. And you met me right whenever I was like, all right, cool, I'm gonna do it. And then I went to LA to the Grammys. I got invited to the Grammys. I went, and then we connected. And you met me at that literal pivot, like at that crossroad is where we met.
Let me see if I got it in summary. So you were singing since you were a little kid, since you could breathe, since you could talk. You went to performing arts middle school, high school, and then when you were going to go to college, your parents were like, go the traditional route, and you were like, no, I want to do, something performing arts, singing, but I don't want you to pay for it. So let's see if we can figure this out. You got a full ride scholarship to study environmental science, and you basically made pretty good partnership friends with the dean, who, once your sustainability program at the school kind of got dropped out, he put you in charge to revamp it. You did all the social media, you got the kids excited, you created the content, you did all that, you did what you said you were going to do. And at the time you were also making music to inspire the children and that they could garden to, and your kids eventually told you hey, you need to make a bigger impact and you got to go out there and do this for real. And we love you, but get out there, get out into the world. So that's kind of where we met. And I met you at the Grammys, I think 2024 Grammys. 2024 Grammy Awards. And we were with Jackson, who I work with, and Kizzo was there, and Think Flex. It was so cool meeting you, because I love that you say the creative process is very much like the scientific process, and that's true. And I think you exude that in your work and how you live and even how you speak, and you could see you testing things and putting things out there. And I just think it's really cool. Man, what an honor to be able to have you speak on this for real. You're so inspiring to me. I'm just really a big fan of you. So I'm so glad your students no, I know how it is. It's man, you want to help the kids, but man, those kids were smart, because in a way they're right. You can have such a massive impact. And I've seen you've been all over the world now too, and
it's been
traveling. And have you been singing your environmental songs, or have you been more on the personal artist side, or what have you been kind of doing the past year?
So the past year has been about data.
Oh.
I'm a data girly. And the past year has really been about, okay, when I go to these places, right? I've been to Anguilla. I did a music festival. It's one of the biggest music festivals in that part of the Caribbean, East Caribbean. It's called Moonsplash. I did that with a young lady named Jamila Falak, and she is the president of the Environmental Philanthropy Organization for the Caribbean. So we connected. I was like, girl, what? We were supposed to meet, and we met in the ocean. And so I've been just collecting data and just kind of putting myself out there, being extremely uncomfortable, leaving my family by myself, mind you. I'd be traveling alone because it's so like I have to hear, I have to be in these moments. And sometimes when you're with people or with groups, for me personally, it's very hard to like discern when I have multiple voices in my ear. So I went and I took that step. I went alone. The first trip I went to Anguilla was with family, and then I went back. I got invited back to perform. So I was performing as like myself as Jordan Ayanna, and just doing the music and all the things. But all of my songs have environmental connotations, like nice woven in there, and they all connect. It's really cool. And then when I was there, I started connecting with the children on the island.
Oh,
And
cool.
then the way God aligned it, I ended up meeting the politicians. And I'm talking to the
So
politicians.
you.
I'm like, yo, so like, what y'all like environmental policies looking like? Like, what? And the beautiful thing is how I even got connected to do the music festival was I went to this place called the Dune in Anguilla. It's founded by Bakey Banks. He is a legend. They call him the Anguillan Bob Dylan. He created this dune to basically preserve that aspect of the shore. So he built this dune to protect the wildlife, and it doubles as an entertainment space. Me not knowing that he was the man that built it, I'm in there observing. I'm like, so, because I thought it was just a music bar. So I'm like, so, and I go to him, I don't even know who he is. Mind you, everyone, like, he's that guy. I don't even know who he is, but I'm like clocking. So I'm like, so what about the noise pollution? Because if this is a music bar and it's very loud, I'm pretty sure the wildlife is not the happiest. And is this wood sustainable? Because how is helping with the sand and the natural vegetation of this land? I'm confused. And he looks at me, he was like, I built this. I was like, ooh. He was like, yeah, I built this to actually save the dune and to preserve the wildlife. And I was like, oh, okay, well, tell me more. And then that's how we got cool. That's literally how we got cool. And then music was a part of it too. But that's how Banky and I got close. And then a year later, I'm performing at the biggest music festival, and it's just and talking about environmentalism and all the things. But he was like very shook because
Wow.
talks to him like that. Like no one be coming for him. But I definitely came for him. Come like,
Hell yeah.
but yes,
That's
so
how you got to do it sometimes.
yes, so
You
last
asked him, you mirrored him, and you said, "Is there more to that?"
is there more? Like, do tell. Yes, do tell.
That's crazy.
So yes, last year was data and music, and this year is going to be application. Like, okay, let me lace the people with the tools. Let me give you. I've been collected the data. I've done the things. That's the hardest part about being your research is just finding that balance and like living your life. People thinking, oh, she's on vacation because she's on an island. Whole time you're like crashing out because you're seeing everything that's going on wrong. You're collecting this data, you're doing the things, you're singing, you're doing the science. And for me, because I do it so gracefully, people just think I'm always on vacation. I'm like, no.
Yeah. You know, when you say collecting data, at first I was thinking like collecting literal like people's emails and their demographics and stuff. But now I'm listening to you and I'm like, oh, she's talking about your soul's collecting data so that your spirit can go and create from there and give the people the tools for, yeah, okay. That's beautiful.
Exactly. Because you never
That's,
just want to go into something assuming that you know what people
yeah. So what you do is you go and actually experience the culture and the people who you want to assist. And then for like a extended period of time, pretty much. And people think you're on vacation, but no, you're collecting data. So when you go back to create, you have somewhere to create from that's an actual real problem going on. So you create from the problem. That's such a scientist way of of creating, but that is like really the only sound way to create, because otherwise it's not really useful or real. It's not coming from anywhere that's rooted, that's necessary. So that's actually that's just great advice for creative people in general. You told me you were in different countries mirroring people.
Yes. I was.
What can you, is there more about that? So we met a year ago.
Yes.
Jackson taught you how to dialogue. You had a beautiful conversation with all your friends online, and from there, tell me how you kind of implemented it or how you used that process going forward.
Yes. So when you're submerging yourself in a different country, in a different culture, there is a plethora of things that you just don't do, specifically as an American. So mirroring was, oh my goodness, that tool that y'all taught me, I feel like personally saved my life in so many situations and allowed me to connect deeper with the people. I'm a Jamaican American, so the Caribbean culture is not too far-fetched from me. But this specific island, Anguilla, is a British territory. And the connecting island that's 20 minutes away that I flew into is called St. Martin. St. Martin has a French side and a Dutch side. So it's a lot going on.
Yeah.
So when I was there, I don't speak French. I don't speak Dutch. But I do speak love and I know how to mirror. Okay. So I would get in these situations where people are like, they feel my love. They feel like they want to embrace me, but there's that language barrier. So I would literally just mirror, like they would say something in French. I would just mirror it back. And I would just like literally, and then they would kind of catch on to I'm not really from there. But the familiarity of the fact that I was genuinely trying and reflecting themselves back just created this beautiful space. And I had one interaction, it was so beautiful, where this lady was talking to me. I was trying so hard to like understand her, and she just looked at me and she was just like, love. And I was like, love. And she was like, love. I was like, love. And she hugs me. I was about to cry thinking about it. She hugged me.
Yeah.
Hugged me, and we just danced. We just danced after that. It was music playing. We just danced. And she was the whole rest of the night, that's all she kept saying was love, love, love. I'm like, love, love. And so definitely mirroring has helped me respect these cultures and these countries, because you never just want to go into these things being like, oh, well, I'm going to solve y'all's problem. Because first of all, who are you to decide that there's a problem?
Right.
So I really had to get uncomfortable, submerge myself in these spaces and mirror these people. And I feel like when we're talking about cultures, like the first thing, if you want to help on any scale, is if the local people don't connect with you, then what are you doing? Because most of these places are like tourist based. So I didn't want to be one of those people that came in, only reaped the benefits of the island and didn't give back, give back. So that mirroring is literally how I got invited back. I got invited back by an islander. He was like, I turned 60. His name's Elvis. He owns the #2 beach bar in like the world, ranked by CNN. The Dune is the #1 beach bar in the world, ranked by CNN.
I need to check that out.
They're both in Anguilla. And they invited me back to perform at his 60th birthday party. And I ended up staying for a whole month. And it was like in that, just submerging, meeting with people, going to the local events, working with the local musicians, going to the local bars, like walking barefoot, staying in the places, eating the thing. I don't eat meat, but still, when they offer you food, eating it, like listening, not projecting whatever I feel like, and just collecting that, like you said, soul data, so I can create from a place that actually is sustainable, because that is the foundation of everything I do, is sustainability. And sustainability means that it could perpetuate and sustain itself out forever, and in a way that's beneficial to everyone. And so, yeah.
It just sounds like the world just opened up to you when you got out there, like your kids were saying, and like, wow. Just like the connections you're making are so, so cool.
It's lit. It's really
Are you, speaking of your kids, are you still teaching in that regard, or are you kind of like moved on from that now? Like what about your gardens and all that?
so the sustainability is still booming. I left all of the tools to my mentee. Her name is Autumn Dancy. She's
Oh,
in grad school now at FAMU, so she is taking it over. She's doing her thing.
amazing.
Still, the garden is still there. I am the co-founder of Farmers Institute Tallahassee. That
Cool.
garden is called the Promised Land, and it serves the marginalized communities in that area of Tallahassee. It's still booming. So now that I moved to Atlanta, I am infiltrating the garden space here, figuring out where I can fit in here. And I'm
Nice.
still working with kids, but privately through my business. So schools, I'll go to schools, talk about science. I'll go to schools and do demonstrations, talk about music, talk about science, talk to the kids, give them the tools that they need. My company will sponsor little, what's it called? The little pots. We do potted plants. I do potted plants events,
Yeah.
like how to water their seeds, where to identify in their house where they should put their plants that get the most sunlight. What is photosynthesis? What is the difference between you and a plant? Nothing really. Y'all both need water. Y'all both need sunlight.
Yes.
So just kind of doing that, and that's been really dope. I have been learning the school system here before I get into the school system here, because
Mhm.
it's a little different than Florida, a lot of different than Florida. So I've been just collecting that data, submerging, going to the town hall meetings, working with certain people, doing those things. So that's been really cool.
Cool. And did you just go to Atlanta because it's like the bigger than Tallahassee kind of thing,
Yes,
or?
I
Okay.
had to be out of Tallahassee. I was born and raised there, and
Ah,
went to school, middle school, elementary, middle school, high school, college there.
yeah.
So I felt like, and there's no international airport, and I'm trying
Oh
to
yeah, no.
fly. So
No. Yeah, worldwide.
I was like,
Cool.
I need to put myself in a position where, and I was like, all right, God, this is what I'm supposed to do. And then set up, everything worked out, and I'm here.
Amazing. It's so cool. And now it's snowing in Atlanta. Is it like still?
Yes. I'm looking out the window, and there's snow on top of all those cars and on top of the roof.
Oh my gosh. I'm guessing it hardly ever snows in Atlanta, right?
It's not supposed to be snowing like this in this region, period. It has, but it's not normal. It's chaos. It's not normal.
It's
It's
chaos, it's
not
climate chaos.
chaos. This is not.
Okay, what do you think about the state of climate change right now? Like, where are we at? Like, what the heck is going on? Why is it snowing why are there fires and why, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Let's just get into it. All right. So, climate change and climate chaos are, people use them interchangeably, but they're
Mm,
very different. Climate change refers to the long-term shifts and alterations in temperature, precipitation patterns, and other atmospheric conditions on Earth. It
okay, hold
encompasses.
on. Hold on. Let me see if I got that. Climate change refers to the
Mhm,
long-term
mhm.
effects of, you said
Temperature,
precipitation.
yes,
What is the other two?
precipitation patterns, and other atmospheric conditions on Earth.
And other atmospheric conditions on Earth. Okay, so climate change is the long-term effects of atmospheric conditions on
Yes.
Earth, pretty much.
And it encompasses both natural and human induced factors.
Climate change also encompasses natural and human-induced factors. Did I
Yes.
get that?
Yes.
Is there more?
So the human induced factors include burning fossil fuels, deforestation, agriculture, and these things have created a gradual shift in weather patterns, sea level rising, and ecosystem changes.
Okay, so in climate change, the human-induced conditions of fossil fuel burning, agriculture, and deforestation
Yes.
have caused the sea level to rise, something in the atmosphere,
Shifts in weather patterns, yes.
the weather patterns,
And ecosystem changes.
and ecosystem changes. What would be an example of an ecosystem change?
An ecosystem change would be oysters. Oysters are a keystone species. We have 1% of them left. Oysters are responsible for filtering out the water of the ocean. So with the sea levels altering and the temperature of the ocean changing, the ecosystem that the oysters typically thrive in has changed. So we are seeing oysters dying, which is impacting the ocean being filtered out, which is very, 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 very not okay, because oysters are a keystone species and we have a lot of species that depend on oysters cleaning out the ocean. So that would be an example of ecosystem changing.
Okay. So ecosystem changing is like species becoming endangered or extinct due to what humans do in the to create climate change, probably human induced factors. And oysters, like you mentioned before, like you did in your thesis, are a keystone species, you said, meaning I'm guessing that means they help their ecosystem operate. Like you said, they clean the ocean. They're part of cleaning the oceans. And wow, I didn't know that. And that's crazy. I wonder how many keystone species are there?
There's a bunch. There's a bunch. Bees are keystone species. So the way I convey the message between oysters are the bees of the ocean. So oysters are to the ocean as bees are to land. If bees go to tomorrow, we'd be done within the next 3 years because there would be no pollination.
Wow.
Oysters have that same effect on the ocean. So oysters are the bees of the ocean.
Oysters are the bees of the ocean.
Oceans are the bees of the sea. Ocean.
Ooh, I've never heard that before. That is crazy because bees are so important and people know that because we're on Earth, so we know about Earth, I guess, but we don't know about the ocean because we don't live in the sea, which is like, wow, okay.
Yes.
So is there more on that?
Yes. So then we have climate chaos. So climate chaos refers to more extreme, unpredictable, chaotic manifestation of climate change.
Extreme, unpredictable, chaotic manifestation of climate change is climate chaos.
So it's often characterized by erratic weather patterns, abrupt climate shifts like snowing in Florida and floods in the winter, and extreme events like heat waves, for it to be like 100 degrees in Houston and then snowing the next week, and flooding in Cali too, and in Florida, droughts, storms. So that's climate chaos. So climate chaos is the physical erratic manifestation of climate change.
Okay, so climate chaos is the physical manifestation of climate change. So it's the abrupt changes in the weather with heat waves, with storms, hurricanes, fires in the winter, flooding, snow in Florida, all that. Did I get that?
Yes.
Is there more to that?
Yes. So the human impact is more immediate and severe disruptions, and they're harder to predict and manage. So climate chaos, it's chaotic because it's harder to predict, and the unpredictability of it can strain agriculture, threaten human life, wildfire safety, infrastructural issues. And so that's where we are with things. It's chaotic.
Okay, so because of climate change, we now have a lot more climate chaos, and that's very scary because climate chaos is hard to predict, which is why we're not able to like recover quickly from these chaotic climate situations.
Exactly.
Did I get that?
Yes.
Okay, is there more to that?
That's pretty much the definitions of those, and I don't like to talk about them without providing tools of like how humans can just can, period. Because one of the things that I teach people and I like to talk about is deconstructing the way our heart is postured towards our position with how we approach and view Earth. A lot of times humans, period, just like how at one point we said the solar system was revolved around the Earth, we have a very egotistical, humanistic way of thinking that we could single-handedly just mess up the whole Earth. Like, no. We are one of thousands, hundreds of thousands of species that are dependent upon Earth. Earth is a living organism. There are species that were here before we were here and that will be here long after we're not here. Humans could die tomorrow, go extinct tomorrow, and Earth would thrive. Okay? Earth is a living organism. She's an organism. And one of the reasons that I talk to people about this is like, whenever we get sick, right? Whenever we get sick, what happens? Our body identifies the virus, heats up, we get chills, homeostasis. Our body creates an environment where the virus cannot exist.
Mhm.
So with Earth, that's kind of what's going on. So we have this species that's being identified as a virus because we're doing things that we're just not supposed to be doing. We're not living sustainably. We're overproducing. We are tapping into ecosystems and infrastructures that were here long before us that we don't need for our society to exist and to exist what we feel like is comfortably. So if Earth is a living organism and has identified us as a virus, what is the body of the Earth going to do? It's going to heat up. It's going to get chills. It's going to create an environment where we can't exist. So when we talk about what we can do as a society and for Earth, it's really more so about how we can create a healthier, more sustainable, and more comfortable environment for us as humans to exist in on Earth. If that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so if I got that, and I love this metaphor. So what happens when a human gets sick is the body creates a climate in which the virus cannot survive in. In this case, humans are the virus from Mother Earth, so she's creating this climate change and climate chaos to basically destroy humans. And I'm losing the last part. What was the last part that you said? Can you resend that?
So she's heating up. She's identified us as a virus.
Yeah.
So it's creating an environment
Oh,
in the body where we're not comfortable.
right. We're not comfortable but what we need to do is create places or create a space in which we can be comfortable on
Exactly.
Earth, is what you said. Okay.
Exactly. Exactly. So when people are like, recycle and do all these things and da 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 da, this is not for the Earth, right? This is for humans' existence on the Earth.
Right.
So that's a large part of like just really getting that, conveying that is so important because I do feel like I always see a disconnect between
Okay.
like save the planet and it's like the planet's gonna save itself. Like the planet is like
She gonna take care of it, huh?
it's save the human existence on the planet.
See, okay, this is interesting because I think honestly, this reframing in people's minds, especially the people who are not believing in this stuff, might actually make it make sense.
Right,
So, what you're saying is she's gonna save herself no matter what we do because she has to.
right,
It's survival. But what we're trying to do through sustainability and recycling and green fuel or whatever, or what we were trying to do at least, um, is really to save humanity from going extinct on planet
exactly.
Earth. So to reframe it as we're not saving the planet, but we're saving our species.
Exactly.
Did I get that?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
Is there more to that?
That's pretty much that.
Okay.
That's pretty much that.
That
And
is fascinating.
yeah. And
That's
it's a
fascinating.
heart posture because if we view ourselves outside of Earth, there's always going to be this disconnect. So a large part of
Dude, my mind is blown right now. Like, I'm just like, I feel like it's sinking in deeper and deeper. And I'm just like,
yes,
wait a minute. It's not about saving the. Okay, I digress, but it's not about like how Americans, we always go try to save different countries, right? It's like, what
yes,
about you're saying, like, no, we need to save ourselves. Like, we need to focus on ourselves. Just how people say, you can't change like your best friend, but you can change yourself.
exactly.
And then, like you can't change anyone but you. So it's the same exact thought process of like, you're not saving the planet, you're just saving your species. So
And you saving your species, you are inherently helping the planet because there's no
yes, because
yes,
we're not disconnected. It's not like
exactly,
a either or.
exactly,
It's like a both and.
exactly.
Okay, word, that's crazy.
Yes. And that heart posture shift will just help people identify with it and just think, because people don't care if it has nothing to do with it.
Right.
People don't care.
Yeah.
Like if someone sees someone getting beat up on the cross the street, it's like, dang, they're getting beat up. They report the fight. But if someone comes up to you and punch you in the throat, it's like, well, ow. And now that it's affecting you, you won't, you know what I'm saying? So that's just the arrogance of human nature.
Yeah.
Of us as a species. That's just one of our, we are the top of the food chain. And we are just we are very arrogant. And I think that we mishandle our dominion. We mishandle our place on the food chain.
It's almost like how they say with great strength or with great power, maybe comes great responsibility, but we are not taking the responsibility part because maybe we don't even see our own power or strength, or, maybe we're just stupid or ignorant or whatever, but
All the things.
wow. All of it. Yeah, all of it.
All the things. We just
That's
out here. Like,
yeah, we really are just out here selfish thinking about ourselves. But I love this perspective, how you zoom out. The more you zoom out, you kind of are making it about us, like saving our species, what we can do. But it feels different. It feels like an embodied version of what people are saying, like save the planet. No, it feels like save our species on the planet. It feels like then you actually have power over that or something.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's one of the biggest parts about why people don't like to talk about climate chaos or climate change, because it's overwhelming and it does make you feel little. It makes you feel powerless and it makes you feel like, well, what can I do? Like, Earth is so big, like it's not going to matter if I just throw this piece of trash. Well, if every single person, if there's billions of people on Earth and they all think like, well, it's not going to matter if I throw out this piece of trash. Now we have a billion pieces of trash. And
Right.
so it's like just kind of bridging that new, which is why I work with kids, because it's easier
to
implement that and to instill that, because it's already innate. It's already programmed in them. Like, kids get it. Like, but whenever you have a certain mentality and you don't see any consequences of throwing something out of the window, you don't see any consequences of ordering multiple thousands of stuff that you throw away from Shein,
right,
every time you go on a vacation. Like, you don't see those things directly, because these are long-term things that are going to impact the generations after us. Even the things that we're dealing with now are from boomers generation. Like, and so that's why I target children, because I'm like, they're going to be the ones who are going to be inhabiting and dealing with these chaotic conditions. So they're going to need to know how to regulate, how to adapt, how to grow their own food, how to be compassionate with one another, how to grieve, because grief is so necessary. You're losing a lot. Grief is not just about someone dying. It's about a reality dying. It's about a system dying. It's about a construct dying. Like, there's so much grief that comes into what we are dealing with. Losing your favorite picture, your family picture in a house fire, that's grief. Losing something that you loved, or an animal in a flood. We need to know how to deal with the emotional aspects that come with these things, and with that comes with just identifying with these things and not seeing it as something outside of ourselves.
Yeah. Can you go into that? So, like, on the grief part of, the state of our world, and now what our new president has kind of done as far as retracting from all these climate initiatives. Do you feel any of that in yourself or in the kids that you work with too? Like, what are they saying? What are you feeling?
Yes, thank you. Let me make sure I understand the question. Let me mirror that.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, those are like chaotic questions.
Let me the mirror. So you're asking, how does what's happening in the environment affect me mentally, and how do I see it affecting the kids that I work with mentally?
Yeah, you got that.
Okay, cool, awesome. This is such a great loaded question, because one of the things that I grapple with is immense, immense, immense anger. I was very angry, because I was very, like, definitely in the first half. This is why I fuel it, and I'm just so blessed to have music to be able to channel it and get it out. But I was so angry because it's like when you know how real these things are, you study these things, you spend 5 years of your life that you're never gonna get back pouring into these things. Almost was about to go get my PhD in it, but I'm like, I don't get my time back, and I have to connect with these kids while I'm young, while I can,
Mhm.
and in certain ways, which helps. And a lot of times we don't sacrifice our youth, but I had to for this. And so I was very, 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 very angry because I wanted to, like, I'll never forget 5 years ago sitting at the dinner table and talking about 5 years from now it's gonna be crazy, and literally being told, like, can you be quiet? We don't want to talk about that. Like, can you hush? Like, we don't want to talk about this. Like, I'm just like, no, like, y'all, like, this is like really real. And so just really just the silencing aspect and like the fake it till we make it masking culture.
Yeah.
I just, it made me very, 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 very angry because it's like being in a narcissistic abusive relationship with society. You get gaslit all the time. You get gaslit all the time. Your world leaders are telling you that it's not real. You are also have a very real true points, and then they hit you with the, well, give me an example. You give them an example and it's like, okay, but like it I was very, very angry. And then it that anger channeled into me being like very radicalized in my giving back, because you realize this along with my faith put into perspective the finiteness of time. When you have such a deep overstanding of time, definitely as a young person, it makes me just use my days very differently, which changed my mental health. So I traveled. I was like, you know what? Forget this. I'm not. I left the relationship with America, and I went to other countries. And I'm like, yeah, nah, they get it. When I went to London, your emissions are tracked. There is a standard for how much fossil fuels you can burn in your vehicles. Your electricity shuts off automatically. The outlets use a less amount of energy and wattage. Like when I went over there, the infrastructure of like how their buildings were used the air and cooling systems from outside, so you don't have to use as much energy from these AC. So like when I was over there, there's a huge thrifting culture. You have to pay for plastic bags over there, which makes people reuse their bags.
Yeah.
And when I was over there, I'm like, okay, okay. Like you're not,
Somebody figured it out.
yeah,
Yeah.
no, we're the problem. And we're definitely the problem. So when I was over there and I'm seeing this, I'm like, okay, cool. So then I went to the Caribbean, and I went to the Caribbean to study. I'm like, well, these people have to live off the land, because when you live on an
Yeah.
island, you can't overconsume, because it literally costs a lot of money to import and export things. So you live off of the land. So I was like, okay, let me go over here. Let me
Right.
see what they're living like. And I'm like, okay, cool. Recycling, using this, not using that. Okay. And then seeing where they were educating their people on the island culture and how to conserve and preserve your beaches, because
Oh, that's
tourism is such a big thing. So they have to keep the beaches clean, because that's their economy thrives off cleanliness. So I'm like, okay, our
that's
aesthetic,
cool. I didn't even think about that.
yes. So
Yeah,
because
that's so true.
yes, so they have to teach hospitality. They have to teach cleanliness. They have
Mhm.
to, like, the kids leave the school once a week and clean the beaches as a part of the curriculum for
Wow.
what they learn over there, because their beaches is how they make their money. So okay, so in America, we don't make our money off of our land. Most of us don't even. A lot of people don't really even leave this country, and so there's a disconnect between there's just a disconnect between cleanliness and the beauty of it, because there is this veil of accessibility to like things.
Yeah.
And yeah, it made me very angry. It always makes me, I'm definitely that friend now where it's like, if you litter around me, like straight up, you gonna have to answer for that. You made Earth uncomfortable. I'm making you uncomfortable. Why did you do that? Let's talk about it. I have stopped my car in the middle of the street, busted U-turn, pick it up. If you don't pick it up, I'm getting out the car and I'll pick it up. I'll go in traffic because it's that serious. It's that
Yeah.
serious to me.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
You
Yeah.
gotta act like you gotta be a voice for the voiceless, like straight
Yeah.
up.
Yeah. No, I love that. I do like the topic of like mental health and environment, because I think it does come with like when you don't have respect for yourself, or like, when you don't love yourself, you probably, you don't care how you treat yourself. So you don't care how you're going to treat
Exactly.
the next person or the planet. So
Exactly.
that's interesting too.
Exactly. I was talking to my friend. He works at Atlantic UK. We always talk about like with my music, there's like a purpose to it. So it's like we live in a society where people don't care about their neighbor. They don't care about themselves. They don't care about how they treat other people. About they don't care, period.
Yeah.
So with that, it's like, okay, now how do you get them to care about Earth? Like it's kind of like, when people take things for granted, you don't realize something is good until it's not. So that's what's happening with climate chaos, is like people aren't realizing how chill life was until now it's snowing in Atlanta. It's snowing in Florida. It's like people aren't, because they have something to compare it to. And
Right.
mentally, it's hard for me too, because I have to fight that just human nature. And this is something I go to God about, like that culture of like, oh, that feeling of like, I told you so.
Mhm.
And it's like, that's very arrogant and egotistical. But every time I feel that, it always goes back into me and I get 10 times more grieved, because it's like, at the end of the day, okay, like, yeah, you told them, then now what? Like,
Yeah.
now what? But
No.
it's just it gets you, it's definitely with these kids, they're having such a hard, and they have so many questions. They have so many questions, and it's so cool to just answer them, but also feel that the weight of the grief of like the reality of what's happening as they get older and infiltrate society and become these leaders, which is why I try to just pour into them as much as possible, so when they get to the positions, when they get to the points where they can make that change, that they like have the tools to do it.
That's all you can really do, and that's amazing that you can kind of channel. Like, I love how you said, I hate it, but I love how you said you feel like you're being gaslit by society all the time.
Literally time.
And I feel like that in itself, then once they see it and it's true, and then you're like, I told you so, but you turn that back in. And then the only thing you can really do with that energy, I guess, is channel it back out into keep doing your purpose, keep
Literally.
teaching them, giving them the tools, singing, writing the music. Like, so it's almost like it's your fuel, to do more
Literally.
good. But it just sucks that people are closed-minded. A
Yeah.
lot of people are, I think one of the things I really appreciate about people when I meet them is like how open their mind is. Like, even if
Yeah.
you are opinionated, as long as your mind is open, then we're good,
Yeah.
because then you're able to teach and learn. But if you're closed-minded, then it's almost like a wall, like there's
Literally.
no point. And I feel there's so many people like that in general on earth. But yeah.
Literally.
I'm glad you're there for the kids, and I'm glad you're focusing on the kids, because you're right. It does take the young mind, to absorb that, and they are the people who are going to be living with the chaos that our parents and our grandparents have created. So
Exactly.
this is what I learned yesterday. Even before boomers, there's this, it's called the silent generation. Have you heard of that?
Mm-mm.
And the silent generation is like, I think it's anyone who's 80 years and up right now. So that constitutes Donald Trump. January 20th, Martin Luther King Day, 2 days ago, President Donald Trump signed several executive orders impacting environmental policies, which I'm sure you know, but for everybody else, he declared a national energy emergency to expedite fossil fuel production. I quote, drill, baby, drill. He withdrew the United States from the Paris Climate Agreement, which I think is the only world agreement for green energy. Am I right in saying that?
Yes. It's
Okay. It's one of them. Okay. And he's rolling back funding for green energy initiatives and suspending offshore wind leases. And I'm not sure what a wind lease is, but those are the three top things that he did the other day when he was inaugurated. So let's talk about that.
So I do want to talk about the wind lease.
Okay.
And this is a hot take.
Okay.
Hot take. An educated hot take. I'm not too mad at him for doing that. Here's why.
Okay.
Wind energy actually is not sustainable. Windmills, there's no way for us to dispose of the windmill when they malfunction, when they break, and when they're done. So we literally have windmill graveyards that they're not combustible, they're not biodegradable, and they're very big. So when these companies use wind energy, it takes a lot of energy to create and sustain wind energy. And then when, let's say, a natural disaster happens or something happens and these windmills malfunction and there's nowhere for them to go. And so we do have literally, like, you can look it up. It's called Windmill Graveyards, where it's like abandoned windmills and they're just out here gone. And they kill a lot of birds. They kill a lot of birds and they kill a lot of air-oriented wildlife. So when it comes to that, I can understand why he would do that because it is an issue. Yeah. And those things are just there. Like, there's nowhere for them to go. Like, and so it becomes an issue of sustainability because it's like, okay, well, we can't dispose of these things. We can't burn them. We can't. So they just leave them there. And now we have masses of land with these giant windmills and stuff like that. And what also happens with wind energy and wind, if it's near an ocean, that wind thrust messes with the current of the ocean, and the sound and the vibrations of it disturbs the wildlife in the ocean. So we have whales and beaching and going crazy near these wind farms that create wind energy because of the vibrations that's coming from the vast amounts of wind being generated. So
Okay, hold on. Let me see if I got that. So first of all, windmill farms are not sustainable.
No.
Because they create windmill graveyards, and that happens if there's a natural disaster to wipe them out, or
disaster, if the company decides that they don't want to do it anymore.
Okay.
Like, there's a bunch of factors if they just don't work out.
Okay, so there's a bunch of those graveyards like around everywhere. And is this only in the US or is this just like
this is all over?
Okay, so in general. And interesting that the massive amounts, like for any windmill farms that are near the ocean, the massive amounts of wind being generated, those vibrations from the wind generation disturb the marine life, and that's why you see like whale beaching and stuff like that.
That's one of the parts of like whales going crazy and animals. Yes.
What?
Yes.
What? These are the things, like, why don't we know this? Is there more to that?
That's pretty much the general aspect of like
the wind.
That's the wind. So I don't really disagree with him.
That's cool. That's great to know.
Aspect. And then I also know, like, politically, when it comes to his reasonings for fossil fuel and fracking is to make America dependent on itself so we don't have to outsource our oil. Yeah. So obviously there are pros and cons to that politically. Yeah. And that's one of those things where it's like I'm kind of neutral on, because the fracking is going to happen regardless, because we have created a society that is dependent on fossil fuels.
Right.
So I'm not one of those environmentalists who is just out of tune with just the reality of what we got going on. Like, the reality of the situation is I'm gonna go to a gas station and put some gas in my car, even though it's a hybrid.
Yeah.
And the gas is coming from somewhere.
Yeah.
So he's coming from a place of wanting wanting America to be dependent on our own oil so we don't have to outsource. So prayerfully, if let's say these things do work out, we can use that funding and use those things to lower these grocery prices and
Yeah.
build the infrastructure for multiple communities. But let's just be for real. So when it comes to the fossil fuel industry, that's one of those things that have been politicized too, because there's not really a lot of education on what fracking is. And at the end of the day, these natural resources they're not everlasting. Like I'm like, y'all act like it's not like it's water, right? Where it's like precipitate, like once the fossil fuel is burned, that's it. Once it's combusted, that's it. And so I think that it's one of those situations where it's going to have to get a lot worse before it gets better. And
Yeah.
we're going to have to get to a point where we hit a wall and we're like,
Mm.
okay, we need to find another way to fuel everything. Like, I don't know, electricity or water or plastic, making plastic combustible, or just this is where sustainability comes in, like using the things that we've already created, that we've already have to generate energy that we need to like for fuel. And
Yeah.
so that's when we talk about his generation and our generation, and just the difference in that is kind of one of those things where they think more uh practical, but the way that their practicality is structured is at the expense of earth and people,
Mm.
where we can see the bigger picture in the long term. And like Donald Trump is not going to be around within the next 80 years to see the effects
He's
of
not gonna be around within 10 years. I
like
mean,
so it's just
maybe.
one of those things where it's like, okay, cool, how do we prepare for what, it's kind of like accepting the reality and preparing.
What would you do to sort of
I would
to bridge
fund
that gap?
fuel alternatives. I would fund figuring out what we can burn and combust that's not fossil fuels or electricity, because America does not have the power grid to sustain a fully electric society.
Oh,
We don't have
okay.
a grid for that. And so it would cost more to do that. It would cost more.
Okay.
These charging stations for these Teslas use a lot of energy. And so
Hmm.
we don't have the infrastructure for that. So
Oh, okay.
while we will be creating, I would try to create an infrastructure for that. And in that, finding fuel alternatives, finding
Mhm.
ways we could burn leaves that have already fallen or plastics that have already been used that can't be recycled, glass, like finding things that we can burn and use as fuel
Yeah.
that don't require us to drill and 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 drill. Or if we are drilling and drilling and drilling and drilling and drilling, finding a way, working with scientists to be like, okay, how can we make this, like, instead of using
Mhm.
one whole gallon of fossil fuel, how can we turn this gallon into 100 gallons by using this one like bit of chemicals and finding other chemicals that work with it to extend it? Like, how can we just find, and I feel
Yeah.
like he's not really trying to do that. He's like, okay, we found something that works. This is what's gonna work.
Yeah.
And so,
No,
yeah.
that's great advice though. Like building because I didn't know we didn't have the power grid to support that, but that's great to know. So building that infrastructure as we also find different things that can be used as fuel for that's not electric and not just fossil fuel, um, fuel for to bridge that gap. Talking about the Democrats and the Republicans and how both sides use climate change as a weapon or
Mhm,
as a polarization tool.
mhm.
Tell me more about that because I think that's fascinating too, since we just also had an election that was a big deal.
So when we talk about the conservative and the liberal divide, and this isn't just our country, this is many countries, conservative parties tend to have, they tend to downplay and to deny the extent of climate change due to perceived conflicts with economic growth, fossil fuel interests, and just frameworks, whereas liberals or more progressive groups advocate for more aggressive action on climate change. So we have these two polar views on, and it's all rooted in the agenda of each side. One agenda is pro earth, pro people. Other agenda is pro economy, economic growth, and pro fossil fuels. So at the end of the day, when we take both of these things, they're both human beings. And that's where we have to come into agreement on. At the end of the day, there's only one race, it's the human race. And we are all affected by these things. So whether you agree in economic growth, you can't have an economy if you don't have a society. And so that's where when we have this ideological like polarization, it just perpetuates that cycle of not really addressing the actual issue at hand, which is how are we going to sustain ourselves as a society? Period.
Yeah.
Period. Like that's the main thing for me. And so it's kind of one of those things where you do have to see out. But
Yeah.
when we talk about, you know, people's pockets, and we're talking about these companies, and we talk about the economy, and we're talking about money, and we're talking about corporate, they're not trying to hear none of that. They're not trying to hear none of that. And that's where I kind of come into play, where meeting everyone, like meeting it, just finding that middle ground, just stop having it be so polar, where it's like, okay, cool. If society does sustain itself, we do need an economy. So how can we have a sustainable economy? Just asking the actual questions instead of just staying so grounded and rooted in the polarization. Because everyone needs to be right. And it's just like there's no right or wrong thing. It's only the fact there's only one truth. And the truth is we're all human beings and that earth is a living organism. So everyone wants to deny, like, I feel like everyone, even I'm gonna come for the liberals, like they want to, it's like climate, earth, but there is this egotistical aspect in some liberal approach to climate change too, because they want to be the ones who save the planet, where it's just like we talked about earlier, the planet's going to save itself. So how can we as a society, as human beings, just find a way to coexist? But this is something that's been going on since the beginning of time. And so it's not just a 2025, 2024 thing. Division has just been a part of what comes of being in a fallen world. So it's just kind of like figuring out our niche, identifying those points, not burning out, trying to get everybody to get it, coming into agreement with the truth that you cannot save everybody, that a lot of people are very comfortable and complacent with not being saved, and that people don't care. And that is okay. So just doing what you can, how you can, when you can, where you can, period. And being real. Like saving one is productive than targeting all and not saving any. So working human by human, step by step, heart by heart. That's how like I had to really like hone in on that, because at the beginning of my career I was like, I just and it's like, respectfully, like, you're not Jesus, you're not God. Like you can't, and it's not your job to. So you gotta check yourself, you gotta check your ego, you gotta check your heart, you gotta check your reason. That's not your job. You were put here to do what you can with what you have. All you have is what you need, so do that. And who is meant to listen will. Just don't stop doing it. And that's where I'm at. Is like, just keep having conversations like this, checking people when they litter, being in these studio sessions and talking about it, even though it makes people a little uncomfortable, just being okay with the discomfort and sitting in the discomfort. I'm blessed to have that superpower where I'm very okay with being uncomfortable. Very okay. Very okay. Like, I'm gonna say the thing.
Yeah, and that's what it takes.
Room, and we're gonna, if you want to talk about it, we can. I'm gonna hold your hand while we do it.
That is so cool. That is so cool. And you're not Jesus, you're not God, but you do have the message coming through you. So you're a messenger for sure. And
I'm just the messenger. We all here for a good time, not a long time.
Not a long time.
So,
yeah.
I'm gonna say the thing. I'm gonna get out.
And on that note, do a drop for us.
All right, you guys. So I am the singing scientist, Jordan Ayanna, aka Jordan Just. You can find me on all platforms at Jordan Just. Twitter is 2 N's, you know what I'm saying? On music platforms, it's Jordan Ayanna, Stream Garden Groove, Day by Day. And if you took anything away from this, just remember that oysters are the bees of the ocean. Oysters are the bees of the sea. Oysters are to the ocean as bees are to the land. Do what you can. Do what you can and just stay grounded. You are a plant. There's nothing that you cannot do. Everything grows down before it grows up. Your root system is equally as important as the moment that you sprout up and start to photosynthesize. You can't feel the sunlight until you establish your root system. So, and I want to encourage you guys too that roots are developed in the darkness. So when you're underground and it's and you're getting those nutrients, it's dark, it's rough, it's cold, it's icky, it's gross. But when you start to grow up and you start to develop those leaves and get that sunlight, it's can sustain because you took that time. So, down to earth is truly, truly, truly what it sounds like. And yeah.
Some people may call it crazy. I've been hearing a lot of that lately. My path is not up for debating. I am no longer hesitating. You did not take the time to count the hairs on my head, so why should I care what they said or she said? I don't have the time. You don't have the time. We don't have the time. The time, the time, the time, the time. I'm trying to live like the birds and the bees. I'm trying to flow like the wind and the breeze. I'm trying to get them lessons I don't even gotta sneeze. When they ask me how, I say I pray on my knees. Gotta keep it going, move like motion. I just gotta keep the motion. How you do it, you don't show it. I pray for grace so you can't see it on my face. I talk to God every step of the way. Some people still call me crazy. Talking sheep, are you paying? Using all your power to be hating when you really could be praying. Keep
You
praying.
did not take the time to count all the hairs on my head, so why should I care what she said or they said? They said, they said, they said, they said what she said, what he said, what they said. Don't care what they said, what they said.
I'm trying to live like the birds and the bees. I'm trying to flow like the wind and the breeze. Trying to get them blessings I don't even gotta sneeze. When they ask me how, I say I pray on my knees. Gotta keep it going, move like motion. I just gotta keep the motion. How you do it, you don't show it. I pray for grace so you don't see it on my face. I talk to God every step of the way. Every step of the way. Every step of the step of the step of the way. Every step of the way. Every step of the step of the step of the way. Every step of the way. Every step of the step of the step of the way. Every step of the way. Every step of the step of the step of the way. Every step of the way. Every step of the step of the step of the way. every 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 step of the way. I'm trying to live like the birds and the bees. I'm trying to flow like the wind and the breeze. Trying to get them lessons I don't even gotta see. When they ask me how I say I pray on my go, keep it moving just like motion. I just gotta keep the motion. How you do it, you don't show it.
At Jesus time, so it's blessings time. How is it? Around the mic. 1, 2, 3. Modify for the MC.
That's my friend from Anguilla. That's Modified.
Really?
Yeah, I recorded that song on the island, and
That's so cool.
he was a MC, and he ended up being my security guard when I went. So I was like, "You saved my life, so you need to get on the song."
Get on the back of this track. Well, thank you so much for being a guest on the Is There More podcast. This has been really, really special, and I know your insights, your spirit, your words, your knowledge, tools, resources, all that are going to really inspire people of all ages all around the world. So I appreciate you for sharing. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you for holding the space.
And until next time.
Yes.